The days of home ownership in America are coming to an end, so you better go out and get yours while you can. This is something I genuinely believe. There's a big thought that there's going to be some crash in the housing market and the prices are just going to plummet. And yeah, there's a lot of equity and there's a lot of ownership that's built up in the older generation. And that means that more homes are probably going to hit the market as banks start seizing on those properties because of reverse mortgages, because of outstanding liens, or they go up on sale because the generation that inherited it just really can't keep up with the taxes or the insurance or any kind of outstanding mortgage payments that are owed. Even if it's free and clear, taxes and insurance going up all over the country make it hard to even hold on to assets these days. But the thought that home prices are going down, I think is really just a flawed one. It's one that's built on hope, but not on reality. Because most people see a home as a home. They see a house as a house. They think that, well, if there's no one who's willing to buy it, the prices are just going to drop and, I'll be able to pick this up for pennies. And that may have existed at some time. And yeah, you can look at the 2008 crisis and you could pick up homes super, super cheap. But that's not the case that we're in right now, right? It's completely different because you can afford homes back then, or at least banks would give you super predatory loans that could mean that you could actually get the home that you probably shouldn't have anyway. But home prices aren't going down anytime soon. They're only going to go up. The thing is, the housing market isn't a bubble. Everyone thinks it's a bubble and that it's a bubble that's ready to burst, but it's not a bubble. Right? They're hard assets and they appreciate in value at different rates because of the popularity of an area. And they may go down and they may go up, but generally they're going to always trend up. Just like the stock market, it's always going to trend up. And that's simply because the devaluation of the dollar. The devaluation of the dollar is why you can't afford homes. The devaluation of the dollar is why grocery prices have doubled and tripled over the past decade. The devaluation of the dollar is the reason why we have so much wealth disparity in this country right now. Because as the devaluation of the dollar increases, unaffordability increases. And when unaffordability increases, people in the working class, people in the working poor can't attain assets because they're just priced out of them because their wages don't have the strength and don't have the leverage to pick up an asset whose value has outpaced their income. It's just, this is the reality of the situation. And there's no reason for any of these assets. Like, listen, gold will vacillate in price, but generally it's always going to go up, right? As we have more and more people in this country and in the world, because this isn't just a problem in America, it is a problem that is international. It is a global problem. Home prices are soaring everywhere. Unaffordability is soaring everywhere. Wealth disparity is soaring everywhere. And it's simply because the economic model that most governments have adopted over generations now have led us to this moment now. It's led us to this moment where the only people who can actually afford homes are the wealthy, and it's where they will store their assets, and they will rent those out if they have to. But it's one of the safest ways for the wealthy to actually put their assets to work, because wealthy people don't just put their money into a bank account and let it set. No, they put it out there and they make it work for them. And that's why you cannot compete with wealthy people. They will keep buying these houses once they hit the markets. Corporations who are able to buy homes will also buy homes and put them on the rental market, simply because, again, it's an easy store of wealth. And because there's so many people and so many companies that you cannot compete against because you're an average person with an average wage, and the asset in which you are trying to buy is just out of your price range, you cannot win, you cannot compete. And you're not meant to. You're meant to rent because if the wealthy, if these corporations, these companies, if they're buying these properties, if they're building communities that are built to rent, not built to own, then they have to make sure that you're not making enough money to actually own a home. It's planned that you rent. It's planned that you are meant to be kept away from home ownership, unless you're in probably the top 10%. So that's 90% of people who essentially, these people would love if you just couldn't afford anything. And that's why home prices will never go down. And as the quality of homes that are being built, affordable homes, are going down, That means at some point they're going to have to be torn down, and you can't just pass it down from generation to generation to build any kind of generational wealth. People always have to continue to buy shoddy homes because the best, most stable, most well-built homes are often the most expensive homes, and they carry the most value and they increase in value the most. And usually they're in far better areas. And so while you may gain $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 in value over a couple of decades in your home, you're competing with people whose home values go up hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars over the same time. This adds on to the wealth disparity. And this is the whole problem to this thing, because like I said, it's meant to be this way. So no, the people who are saying that the housing bubble is about to collapse and we all just need to sit on the sides. And I talk to people like this every day in my job, people who are just like, I'm waiting on the sidelines. It's like, you've been waiting on the sidelines for years. You've been waiting on the sidelines for years as mortgage rates continue to rise, as home prices continue to rise. And the fact is, 10 years ago, people said that when mortgage rates rise, the price of homes will go down. But that just hasn't been the case. The predictability of the market isn't measured on the wants and wishes of the working class, the working poor. The predictability of the market is very easy to gauge if you look at it from the perspective of the wealthy and the attainment of assets, and how the wealthy wish to attain more assets. Then it's fairly understandable where it's at, where we're going, and how things just aren't going to change. Of course, it's going to hit a point where no one can actually buy homes anymore, and rent will be, so far gone that people can barely afford rent. That either everyone has to live with roommates, families will essentially be obsolete, and of course you can say, well, we're in a population crisis right now, and not enough people are having kids. So at some point, it has to hit a point where there's more homes than there are people. And although there's been a birth rate crisis in America, the population has never gone down. And this is due to immigration. And, people can smash their heads against the fences about immigration all they want, but immigrants are still going to continue to come into this country because the corporations need them. Listen, with the massive push on immigration that there's been with this administration, at the same time, there's been a lot of calls from the wealthiest people on the right saying, hey, okay, now let's get amnesty. We made our point loud. Now let's get amnesty. Let's make sure that we just have workers coming in, because that's what it's all about. The population in America isn't going to go down because we have to feed the beast, right? America survives because of its economy, because America is an economy. America is a business. And those who are in charge, and that's not you, those who votes actually count, and that's not you, they want this business to continue. So it doesn't matter if you don't have kids. It doesn't matter if you don't have grandkids, because you'll just import some eventually. Because your idea of ownership doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things when it comes to what the wealthiest people in this world really want. Because like I said, at this point, it goes beyond nationality, and it is something that is happening globally. On this channel, we have a fairly international viewership, and I hear it all the time that, hey, this isn't just a problem that's in America. And living in Greece, living in Turkey, and even living in Thailand, you're seeing as economies grow and more money hits the markets, it causes asset prices to move up, and that's why a lot of people in Greece can't afford homes anymore. If in Turkey, good luck, because the wages there are absolutely trash. But but all the homes, if you live in Istanbul, buying a home there is like trying to buy a home in South Florida. It's ungodly expensive. And it's like that all over Europe, because it's the plan. It's the plan that you rent, and your life is essentially just meant to be a payoff to the wealthy, right? You are the interest. Without even knowing that you've entered a contract of indentured servitude, you have. Anyone who exists in this market has. The only way to have any kind of security and to move up in this world is to get assets, is to buy a home, is to have ownership. And at some point, it's going to be so far out of the reach that if you didn't buy a home now, or you haven't bought it in the past, you're just going to be locked out forever, and you're going to be a forever renter. And that's why I say those who are sitting on the sidelines to stop. Interest rates are high now, and they may go down, and you can refinance. That's fine. But can you even get a mortgage when the price of these homes go up another $100,000? A home that's $600,000 now, 10 years from now, is going to be over $1 million. A home that's $200,000 right now is going to be $400,000 or $500,000 10 years from now. And that's because the devaluation of the dollar is just increasing at a rapid rate as we have a frivolous spending, as we go into a trade war that drives up the price of everything around us, which is just a market engineered inflation that we all are dealing with, and just call it, well, it's like a sales tax, but it's helping our country, even though it's not. But it's insane. Listen, the housing market isn't for you, and you need to get in while you can. Either that or you're just going to be stuck. So as hard as it is to say, the housing market in America isn't a bubble. It's just a trend, and it will continue to trend up for the foreseeable future. So thanks for stopping by. If you're still here at this point, like and subscribe. Think about becoming a member. Listen, this is hard times we live in, and the global population is really at an interesting point where survivability and resources are just really at a breaking point. And it really leads to pretty dark places that I honestly believe that the world is kind of coming to. But you know what they say, the higher you are, the longer the fall. And I think that first world countries like America and like the West, as these things become more difficult and more people begin to fall and economies really start to teeter and then collapse, and the wealthy have taken all the assets and all the wealth from these countries and then piss off to Hawaii, to their shelters, it's going to get bad. It's going to get real bad. And things are just going to have to change out of necessity. Because if we're not going to change things by choice or by will, then it's just going to have to be to survive at some point. And unfortunately, that's what it looks like it's going to. On this channel, we like to talk about these things because it's important to talk about these things. And it's not doom and gloom. It might be a little doom and gloom, but it's not click farming. These are important things that we need to talk about. These are important things that we need to discuss and we need to be aware of. And by God, with this channel, let's bring them up, and I would love to have some kind of change. I'd love to have some kind of dialogue. But the dialogue that we have with each other, if it doesn't actually move towards true revolutionary action in one way or another, then nothing's truly going to change. Not at all, because we are not in competition with each other. And I think this is one of the things that is built into our psyche, that it's a dog-eat-dog world and our neighbors are our enemies, right? Our classmates are our enemies. Our coworkers are our enemies. But it's not. It's those who possess the most assets in this country, the wealthiest people in this country, in this nation, in this world, against the rest of us. And I only have faith in actual change happening at some point, just because you're talking about 0.0001% of the global population against the rest. And numbers mean something. And there's power in popular voice. And we need to understand that. We need to use it while that voice still has any kind of power. But that's all I have for today. Have a good one.